Okay, today we are going to be talking about triangle congruency theorems. So in order to prove that triangles are congruent, there are different theorems we can use to prove it. Okay, so we're going to want to divide our paper in half. And our first congruency theorem we are going to be talking about, we use the abbreviation SSS, and that stands for side, side, side. And this theorem tells us that if all three corresponding sides are congruent, then those triangles are congruent. Okay, so the corresponding sides. So if we use little markers, that mean the sides are congruent. So this marker and this marker, that tells us that this side is congruent to this side. Okay, so those corresponding sides are congruent. They're the same side in each triangle. And then this side is congruent to this corresponding side, so to that same side in the other triangle. And then the third side is congruent to this corresponding side. So all three corresponding sides are congruent. We would be able to say, due to the side, side, side theorem, these triangles are congruent. Okay, we can also use side, angle, side to prove triangle congruency. So if you have two sides and the angle between them that are congruent, then we know those triangles are congruent. And note that it has to be between them. So side, angle, side, it goes in this order. You have a side and then the angle inside of the other side. So side, angle, side. So this side is congruent to this side. This angle is congruent to this corresponding angle. And this side is congruent to this corresponding side. So you have these two sides that are congruent in both triangles, and then you have the angle between them. So if that's the case, then these triangles are congruent due to the side, angle, side theorem. Okay, another theorem to prove congruency is the angle side angle theorem. And so that means two angles and the side between them are congruent. So we'll draw our two triangles. So this one says the two angles. So we have this angle and this corresponding angle are congruent. This angle and this angle are congruent. And then the side between those two angles. So it has to be the side between those two congruent angles. If those are also congruent, then that proves that these triangles are congruent according to the angle side angle theorem. And the last one we're going to be talking about is the angle side theorem. And so this one says if you have two angles and a non-included side that are congruent, then the triangles are congruent. So we have this angle is congruent to this angle. This angle is congruent to this angle and a non-included side. So that means it doesn't have to be the side between the two angles. Okay, so this could be our non-included side. If these sides are congruent, then we know that these triangles are congruent according to the angle side theorem. Okay, so we're going to be using these theorems to determine if triangles are congruent, and if they are, which theorem proves that they are congruent. So go ahead and open up to your triangle congruency assignment in your workbook. Okay, and we're going to state if the two triangles are congruent. If they are, we're going to state how we know. Okay, so we know that this side is congruent to this side, and this side is congruent to this side. Now, we have to look for an angle because we don't know that these sides, it doesn't tell us that these sides are congruent, so they're not. If you remember vertical angles, these are vertical angles. And so we know that those are congruent. So we have a side, and then we have an angle, and then we have a side, right? And the angles between those two sides. So if we look at our notes, side, angle, side, two sides, and the angle between them are congruent. So we have two sides, and the angle between them are congruent. So we would say yes, these are congruent because of the side, angle, side. And maybe we'll actually write congruent. And how do we know they're congruent? Because of the side, angle, side theorem. Okay, so make sure to look out for those vertical angles, okay, because I see that coming up on number 2. And go ahead and complete your assignment.